Start recording. All right. Welcome. I'm so excited to have this conversation. This is my beautiful friend, Ari Cardoche, and she is a relationship coach. She's a speaker and a best-selling author. And today we're actually going to be chatting and talking a little bit about ethical non-monogamy. What is out there that maybe you haven't even thought of? And Ari's a perfect woman to share. She's got some great stories, great advice. So Ari, introduce yourself. Tell us.
Oh my goodness. I am just so thrilled and honored to be here. Thank you, my dear. And to talk with all of you about what is out there, what's really possible. And let me just start with laying down some people are like, oh, you work with people who are not monogamous. I work with everybody. I don't think there's one right way to do relationships or do life. So let me get that really clear. Like, I'm going to talk a lot about different options today, but really it's a choose your own adventure. I want you to imagine that you have a blank canvas and you get to make your own art. And I'm going to give you some ideas of different things you could use to make your art, but it's really yours at the end of the day. And it's going to look different than everybody else's if you give yourself that freedom to express yourself in the moment to your purest joy, your highest joy, that what works best for you and whoever you're with. In a place of transparency and honesty and integrity. And so with all of that in mind, we'll just go down this little path of like, what else can we create if we could create anything we wanted and have fun with it? And that could be a whole new flavor of monogamy for you. And that's awesome. It could be a whole new flavor of, wow, I never thought I would do that, which will be really cool. So we'll get to play with this. So with all that being said, let me tell you, I've been a relationship coach now for well over probably 8 years now. My background is in sexual psychology, and then I went on to do international business and studied around the world. I've been to well over 50 countries now and spoken on 6 continents and taught I have clients across all 6 continents now. But I also went and worked for Amazon.com doing leadership development for about 5 years, and I loved it. And during my time there is when I really started to understand the power of how we relate to other people, like really started to get it. And I started exploring different ways that I could connect in my personal relationships that felt more fulfilling to me. I was raised in a very conservative Christian environment in the middle of America. I grew up in Michigan. And then I found that I just had all these desires that felt out of alignment with what I was being told by my community, by my church. And I wanted to know what else was possible, which took me down all sorts of crazy adventures, really good stories. If you ever listen to the podcast Body Storytelling, I highly recommend it. It's one of Glamour's top 10 sex podcasts of the year. It's amazing because it's all these different stories of people telling their truth about what sex and intimacy have been like for them. So anyways, I've spoken on there, my husband's spoken on there telling our adventures. We've had some crazy adventures, and we've really invested a lot of time and energy into how do we develop ourselves? What's there? What's missing? Whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's sexual, whatever it might be, like, what do we want to explore and how can we be curious? So my invitation to each of you today is to just remain curious. This is just a bunch of information. If it lands with you, if it like piques something in you, great, let's explore that. If you're like, nope, just throw it out. The one thing I will warn you though, is there's a rule in the kink and BDSM community that if you say, I would never do that, then 5 years from now, you'll probably be teaching a course on how to do that thing. So be warned. Be curious. So that's a little bit about where I want to go, my background. Let me tell you, I've explored a lot around relationships and sexuality and how we connect as humans, communication, how we develop ourselves. And so anything is fair game to talk about. And it's been everything from, I used to teach at kink.com. I've been one of the leaders of one of the largest organizations around ethical non-monogamy in Seattle and in the US. I've served on lots of different boards for working with transformative restoration, transformative justice, helping people who have gone through consent violations. How do we heal as a community? How do we heal as individuals? And I also I've been teaching kink and BDSM for a long time. I don't do that so much anymore, but I've done that with some of the world's top sex positive experts, and I've gotten to be guests on lots of different podcasts and shows like this to just talk about what's possible if we deconstructed all the stories we were told before. Because we have all got stories, whether it was through the media, whether it was through our parents, whether it was through our religious organizations, whatever it was. And I don't want to label any of those as wrong. I just want to say those were stories. We're all given a bunch of stories. And whether we're conscious or not of those stories that are in us, they're still there. So let's bring them to light and let's say, is this actually serving us right now? And give yourself the permission to be flexible, to be, we use the word agile a lot in technology, to be agile and to really shift with wherever you're at this time. So if today you feel I am straight and I am monogamous, that's beautiful. And I want to celebrate that. And if tomorrow you wake up and you feel like you are a lesbian and you are just want to be a slut and claim everyone, that's beautiful too. And it doesn't like, that's not my business. I want you to do so with full freedom and expression and curiosity, as long as you're doing so ethically with integrity and awareness of what you're choosing. Cool?
Yes,
Right.
agreed. Permission to change. We don't have to be the same person all the time. And I love what you're just saying around ethical non-monogamy and the awareness around that. So can we dive into like what is ethical non-monogamy?
Yes, ethical non-monogamy. So we're going to use this as there's one big umbrella term that you might hear often, sex positive. Sex positive is like anything that is going to be around, it's okay to develop a healthy sexuality. It's okay to identify with your gender or your sexuality in different ways. It's okay to explore these things and have differences. Another big umbrella term is ethical non-monogamy. This is the idea that there are ways to be with multiple people in multiple different ways that can be done using your heart to guide you, and in a way that is consensual for all adults. I'm going to make it very clear that it's for adults. This is for adults and how adults relate, and that everybody who's involved understands what's going on and is consenting to this behavior. And so there is some amount of agreements that kind of go into place with this. There's always agreements. Everybody makes agreements, whether you speak them or not. My best-selling book is called Relationship Agreements, and it's for any structure that you're in, whether you're monogamous or polyamorous, or we'll go into these terms. But it's basically the idea that you get to create what you want, but make sure it's clear. My background in leadership development had a lot to do with HR at Amazon. We documented everything. And what I found was that the documentation, when done well, provided a lot of structure and safety. And then there were people who are freaked out about this idea of like, oh my God, we're writing down an agreement. Now it's a legal document. You're going to take me to court if I screw it up. And I'm like, no, we're going to make this a living document that you and your partner or partners get to change and shift as much as you change and shift. And it's just adding clarity, because we often think that we're speaking the same language with our partners, and they are interpreting through their own lens. One of my dearest partners, former partners, who helped me co-author the book, his name is Adam, and Adam and I were super proactive, and we were together for many years, and we were very proactive in how do we develop our relationship. And I just remember sitting through, like, we found an incredible therapist that would just hold us accountable and ask us good questions. And after years of doing this together and really like working through some juicy stuff, which produced that book, we ended up in one of our last sessions where she just zeroed in. She's like, you know what? I've been asking you this question for years, and it just occurred to me to ask you, what do you mean by support? When you say, because I hear you both saying you support one another. What do you mean by support? And I went into my definition, and he went into his definition of this simple word, and there were two completely different answers. Two completely. And we thought we were still operating from our, like, we were really in integrity. We were doing the best we could with the definition that we held, but it wasn't in alignment. It wasn't the same thing that we were going for, and we just couldn't see it. So one thing I would say is get yourself a coach or a relationship therapist or whatever it is. Find somebody who really resonates with you, not just anybody, like you trust them. There's something about them and the way that they show up that's in alignment for you, and whoever else you're going with, and continue to explore what's there, because we don't know. We were all taught these things by our parents that just don't work. Anyways, so I digress. So anyways, these agreements about whatever you want to be are really important, can be very healthy, and you don't know what you don't know. So just checking in, like, do you want to be my partner? What does partner mean? What does partner mean for you? Like, even the modern day, like, do you want to get married? What does a wedding mean to you? What does a marriage mean to you? What are all the stories that go with that around finances and roles in the house and what you're going to do together and how much time you're going to spend together? And right, like, we don't talk about these things in normal world. And that's what leads to so much of the stress and frustration and divorce and all the things. So ethical non-monogamy. Ethical non-monogamy is this umbrella term for any way of being with multiple people that is ethical, that is coming from a place of transparency and integrity. So a form of non-monogamy that you probably are all very familiar with is when you're single. You're single and you're dating. You're going on lots of dates. I'm single and I'm dating. And it is completely socially acceptable for you to be going on dates with multiple people at one time, right? You might even be sleeping with multiple people at one time because you're just going on dates, and maybe that's part of your dating thing. Okay, cool. And that is okay from the mainstream context because you haven't applied a label and a commitment yet. But once you've applied the label and the commitment, there's a whole bunch of backstory that goes with it. And I want to just say, which one has the bigger risk to it? I'm gonna like paint another picture. Another idea is that there's somebody who identifies as, we'll say, solo polyamorous. A solo polyamorous person is one who wants to be single, who wants to maintain their autonomy, doesn't want to get into a deeply committed relationship with anyone, and they're continuing to date around. But part of their commitment is that every person that they go on dates with, this is a generalization, everybody has to choose their own, but a general commitment is, I'm going to be transparent with my activity. So I'm going on a date with you and I'm letting you know, I'm also going on dates with like 6 other people right now. I'm sexually engaged with 4 of them. So I just want to let you know, and then you can make decisions for yourself. So you're not thinking, they're very just aware of the landscape. Because in more of the traditional mainstream, going back to that, like, I'm single and dating around, maybe the person you're going on a date with thinks that they're the only one you're seeing. And maybe they think that this is they have such a good chance of being with you, when maybe there's less of a chance, or maybe what you're looking for are 2 different things, or, it's being very clear with who you are in this moment and making sure everybody's on the same page. And what I find is when people develop more of a repertoire or a language in using the tools from ethical non-monogamy, then they have better words of communicating when they do want to be dating, for what they want and how to protect themselves and other people. Because if I now know that you're single and you're going on multiple dates and you're sleeping with 2 of these people, or whatever it is, then I can make a decision for my own sexual health, how far I want to get engaged. It's not just a simple question of, are you clean? Which I hate that, because it means that, like, the other story is that somebody else is dirty, right? It's like, they're not dirty. They have an STI. It's an infection. We get infections all the time. We just don't put the same stigma around a cold as we do around getting any other STI. Right? So that's a whole nother thing we can go into another time. So I am like going all over the place. I'm going to rewind to ethical non-monogamy and break this down and give it a little bit more structure. Ethical non-monogamy, lots of different ways to show up. Common things you may have heard of: swingers. Swingers are, these are all generalizations. Swingers are going to be people who are already coupled, usually they're in a pair, and their desire is to share the physical connection with other people, the sexual physical connection. So you might have heard of swinger parties, where they go together and then the couples go with other people, and they usually end up going back home with their main partner. And that's been around for a very, very long time. That started, I think, World War I is when we have the first documented, we call them key parties, where they would leave like all the military men to build brotherhood and trust and make sure that their wives were taken care of if they were going to die in war. They'd have these parties that they'd all show up, drop their keys in. The women would pick a key, and whoever's key they got was the brother that was going to be their lover for that evening. And it was really to build community and safety in a time that didn't have that security. And so really looking at like, where do these traditions come from? Do they really hold a lot of the dirtiness and the story that a lot of us were raised with? Do they need to have that? Or are those just keeping us away from being really ourselves and expressing ourselves what we want? If the shame wasn't there, if the guilt wasn't there, and if you could just experience all the pleasure you wanted and everybody was okay with it, what would you create? So that's the swinger model. Another really common ethical non-monogamy term is polyamorous. People who are polyamorous, poly meaning many, amorous meaning loves, they can have many different loves. And it doesn't mean that you're sleeping with everybody. It may be a romantic love. It may be an emotional love. It may be a purely physical love. It could be anything. And it really depends on the people. And I've seen some people create structures where there's one person who really loves monogamy. Maybe they're really introverted and they want a lot of time to themselves, or maybe they're deeply dedicated to their passion, their purpose and work in life. And they don't really have time or interest in having another partner. So they're really happy with one partner. The other partner may feel most happy with multiple partners. And so they create this structure where they're seeing other people and everybody's winning. Everybody's okay with the situation. Within polyamory, there's many different structures that are common. So there's the V, where it's like Bob's here, Jody's here, and Lucy's here. So Bob and Jody are dating, Jody and Lucy are dating, but these two don't see each other. Okay. These two are called the metamors. So these are the people who are not seeing each other, but they're still connected. They're connected through her. And so there's still this relationship aspect, and they can make this whatever they want to make this. Maybe they don't ever talk to each other. Maybe they become best friends. Maybe they all live together. Who knows? That's like what works for you. There's also the W, right? So I see a lot of W's in Seattle, especially. People like to get in groups of 5 and they all like live together, and there's like the 2 or 3 points of contact who have the most lovers, and it's really fascinating. And it works for many, many different people. It's whatever works for you. So under polyamory, it really is about how do you want to explore many loves? And some people choose different things around like, okay, do we want to have hierarchy? Do we want to say like, you are my primary partner and you're going to get the most time and attention and all those things? That often happens, especially if you want to parent together, because you need to spend more time raising children and handling logistics and all of that. Other people, and then there's a term, if you're not the primary partner, a lot of people will say this, they have secondary partners. A lot of people hate those terms. You get to create what works for you, what makes the most sense for you, and that honors everybody involved. If somebody's like, I don't want to be called a secondary, that sounds crappy. Don't call, like, how can you restructure this? There's also non-hierarchy. That would be getting rid of all of this. Like that we're all equal. We all show up. We all get the equal attention. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to have like the same amount of time on a calendar every week. You know, maybe you're going to have one long distance lover. Maybe you're going to have a live-in partner. Maybe you don't want to live with anybody, but you're going to go travel to see people. Who knows? But just give yourself the freedom to explore, like, okay, is there a word out there that's already been created that fits what we are creating or what we want? And if not, that's okay too. We get to make up our own flavor. But there is so much around this. A really great resource, 2 really great resources. If you are like, this is really cool, where do I learn more? One can be called Opening Up by Tristan Taormino. Love her stuff. Love her in general. She's great. And also More Than Two is a really helpful book, and it's a really helpful website. So if you just want a free resource to get you started, morethan2.com is really wonderful. In Seattle, there are 2 great podcasts by people I adore. One is called Savage Love Cafe by Dan Savage. which has to do with lots of alternative ways of being in a relationship. The other one is Polyweekly by Cunning Minx, and she's got lots of wonderful resources on there. And she's just a beautiful person. So there's some resources. I'll try to get you links if you need them. Polyamory, hierarchy, non-hierarchy. And we talked about solo poly earlier, somebody who just wants to be like more the single role and dating around. I also want to talk about the fact there are people who don't like the idea of being in a relationship for the physical pleasure doesn't do it. What they want is maybe deep cognitive connection. They really want somebody they can just sit and be like, feel just that deep connection through their discussions and dialogue. I'm gonna blank on the name right now, of course. Sapiosexual, I believe. Sapiosexual, do you find the connection through the mind? Another one is there are people who are asexual who just, they don't feel connected to their, like the sexuality just isn't a piece of their life, you know, and they find other meaningful, deep relationships in other forms. And so if that's you, okay, cool. There's whole communities out there with huge dating pools, and thanks to the internet, we can find each other now. If you are, I think you had a guest speaker on, Tyler was on another time talking about kink and BDSM. If you didn't hear about it from him, there's a website called fetlife.com. FetLife is like the kinky Facebook, but it also has a lot of other relationship structures on there. I warn you, do not open an account, do not open the browser when you are anywhere near a place where you can't see boobs and butts. There's a lot of crap on there. And there's a lot of easy ways to find community and find events for polyamorous meetup groups or ethical non-monogamy discussion groups happening, different events. If you're like, I really want to go to a swinger party and just see what it's like. There are lots out there. So that is one method of finding them. All right, ethical non-monogamy, everybody's on the same page. One other thing I want to talk about that I hear a lot from my clients is that they're, you know, it's like, well, okay, let's say I decide I want to see somebody else. How much do I tell my partner? And I just want to say that there's so many different ways to do this. One of the more mainstream ways that I've seen is don't ask, don't tell. So we don't talk about anything. We pretend like it's not happening. I don't have a mistress. I don't have a lover, whatever it is for you. I have seen that work one time in over a decade of doing this. And I can't even say it worked that well. So take that as a grain of salt, you do you. But if you want to avoid landmines, I would say that's probably not the best way to do it, because you're not actually dealing with your demons. You're not actually being like coming into awareness and saying, wow, I have jealousy. Wow, that really hurts. Ouch. How can we have agreements around this? What do I need to feel safe? Because you can all feel safe in relating in whatever style you want. And if it doesn't feel safe and your partner isn't honoring your agreements, then maybe that's not the right partner for you or partners for you. And you can create something better. So that's the don't ask, don't tell model. The other side is the fire hose method, where we basically just come home from our day and be like, baby, I just went on the most amazing date. Let me tell you all the things we did sexually and emotionally and all the things. And it's like, blah. I have not seen that go very well either. And so I would invite you to try something that I created called Inquire Within. And Inquire Within is basically this idea that the person receiving the information gets to control the nozzle about how much water is coming out of this hose. So if I went on a date, and actually if Nora, you and I are partners, let's say for this demonstration, Nora and I are lovers, we're partners. I already told her I'm going on a date tonight, or she's going on a date. Let's make it that way. Nora, you went on a date. You went out, you had a great date, you come home. I'm going to be the receiver of information. So what I would get to do with you is say, hey, babe, how was your date? And you might say, oh, it was really nice. It was really great. And then you get to just stop right there and wait. And I'm like, cool. That's all I wanted to know tonight. That's all I got capacity for. Done. So want to make some dinner, right? Or maybe I'm like, oh, that's really cool. You know, I would love to hear, did you guys, what'd you do tonight? And she's like, oh, you know, we went to dinner and then we went and saw a movie and then went back to his place. And then she just stops. I was like, okay, checking in with myself. Do I have capacity to learn more right now and really be with it, whatever the answer is? I do. And I'm really curious about, like, did they do anything physically? All right. So did you guys get to have any sexy time, any intimacy time? She's like, yeah, we did. Stop. Can you tell me about it? Yeah. So, we kissed, we cuddled, we ended up having oral sex together. Is there anything else you'd like to know? And then I get to decide. Or maybe I'm like, wow, that was way too much. I didn't think you were going to go that far. And it's fine based on our agreements, but I need to go process this, right? And then I get to go and do my own process. And a lot about being in any open form of relationship, I'm going to not even claim that. Any part of being in a relationship with another human being who's going to trigger you, because that's what relationships do, is to be with yourself and be with your own emotions and process them, and to go into the darkness and go into the, I just want to scream and punch a pillow, and allow yourself to not hold back on that. Don't be like, I am calm, I am zen, everything's fine. Instead, fall apart in a healthy way, screaming, punching a pillow, really letting it all move through you, letting these emotions be in motion and move through you, so you can get to the heart of what's really there, and you can go back and talk to your partner in a rational way. And we can talk about all those tools another time, but that's there. So, we're going down so many rabbit holes, and I love it. So the gist of that message was, if you if you try to enter, if you decide to enter into a less mainstream relationship structure, just being really aware of what is our communication navigation tool, like, or tools. How are we going to do this? Because when people say, what's the hardest thing about, being in an open relationship or ethical non-monogamy, I'm like, calendaring. Are you on Google Calendar? Because if you haven't got that set up, like, you are not going to succeed. And communication. You're going to spend, chances are very high, you're going to spend more time trying to communicate about your pains and your triggers and your traumas and your desires than you will actually going on dates of, like, fun and connection for a little while, because it's so new. We haven't learned this. The first year is like the biggest, hardest period. There are so many landmines. And that's usually the biggest test of, like, if you can avoid the landmines in the first year or have less damage when they do go off, because they will go off, then you're going to be more successful in the future. And I highly, highly, highly recommend this. My friend Reed Mahalko says, date your own species. And that means that, like, don't try to find people who haven't already been thinking about this or doing this, whatever this is, and try to convert them. So if I am like, I'm monogamous, I've always been monogamous, I've always wanted monogamy, that's really what I desire in my life. And my partner is like, baby, I have all my life been thinking about being an open and having this relationship with multiple people. I think I would feel the most fulfilled. The chances of one of you converting the other are not great. And it's just being real with where you're at. And there are ways to navigate that, but really getting true with yourself, like, where are you at? And don't kid yourself that you can 99% of the time at some point down the line. So find people who have those interests.
I love everything that you've just
Sorry, Nora. I rambled a lot.
The thing is that there's so many different ways to be relating, and yet it's just so not talked about in normal mainstream society. And this is why we just end up doing the relationship escalator, which is, you're dating multiple men. Maybe you're like, oh, yes, cool, let's date just solo exclusively, maybe for a while. Then he's meant to propose, and we're going to marry, then we're going to buy our house, then we're going to have kids, or in some order like this. And this is the biggest learnings I had, is like, wow, like, what do I actually want? What do I desire? And my biggest question is, like, how do I want to be loved? What does that mean for me? And how can I then communicate that to whoever I'm relating with, and see if we can align the way that we both want to be loved? That's the biggest insight I've had in all of these
Yes.
years around relationships and love. And I really want you to share your personal story, Ari, because you're just so fascinating, and how you are, because it's not only teaching this, but you're experiencing this in a real time. So if you're comfortable, please share a little bit about how you're navigating
Yeah.
different forms of relationships.
Sure. So let me first and foremost own that I was that good Catholic schoolgirl who was doing all the things perfect and working her butt off to maintain that perfection. And then when I was alone, I just wanted to be with the bad boys. Like that was the thing. And that double lifestyle led very easily into what, the only option that mainstream gives you in movies and things, which is to become somebody who cheats. And I was cheating all the time, and it hurt my soul, but I was getting what I wanted. I always felt more comfortable when I had two partners, but that's not okay, right? It's not okay. At least not in the environment I was raised in. It's not okay in like a lot of mainstream places still. And yet cheating somehow is more acceptable in a weird way. It's a little bit messed up. So I just was going on this path, and it led me to all sorts of like, okay, I'm just not going to commit. I'm going to just date around. I'm going to have all the fun I want. I'm going to have all the wild experiences I want. And studying sexual psychology was just a natural for me, because I'm like, this is what I'm really excited about. Like, this is so cool. Why do we do these things? Why are we drawn to them? And then that led to me like, how far down the rabbit hole do I go of my life? Basically, I was trying everything and trying to figure out like what is out there that really resonates for me, and how can I finally feel loved and satisfied. And I made a lot of mistakes, and I hurt a lot of people, and I hurt myself a lot, and I just wasn't loving it. And at some point in time, I can say I've only been in one relationship that I think was truly abusive, and it was emotionally abusive, and it was very manipulative. And when I came out of that, I didn't have a sense of who I was. And I felt back into my Christian upbringing very quickly. And I'm like, I am a sex addict. That's what I am. And that's the label I chose. I'm a sex addict. I'm going to go into Christian therapy. And so I put myself in a 12-step program for sex addicts. And I put myself into private Christian coaching and therapy, so I could get back on the righteous path. Even though I wasn't really sure that that's what that Christianity was it, I just knew that I felt so gross all the time. And around this point in my life, so I'm a dancer. I've been dancing for 33 years and I love it. And I was at a salsa event, and I met this beautiful man, just beautiful. And everything in me just lit up. And I was like, and I just knew that I needed to take him home. And I was like, oh shit. And I eventually, like that night, I ended up taking him back home, and we had a beautiful evening together. In the morning, I just like broke down and cried. I'm like, I am so sorry. I just need to tell you that like I'm a sex addict. And he just looked at me with the sweetest eyes, and he asked me, he's like, Sunshine, I don't think you're a sex addict. He's like, from the things you've shared with me in our discussions, he's like, in our discussion all night, like, I think you're just a woman who really loves people and loves connecting and feels most connected when you get to be with more than one person. He's like, there's a word for that. I'm like, what is the word? He's like, it's polyamorous. And my parents are polyamorous. And we were raised in this environment, and it was very healthy. And we felt like it was very loving. And we just show that there's more capacity for love than what we see on TV. And it like, so he invited me to read a book called The Ethical Slut. Totally changed my world at the time. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'm not totally fucked up. And I read the book, and I got some ideas, and then I thought, no, can't do that. That's wrong. Back to Christianity and trying to do monogamy and failing at monogamy again. And then I was invited to move to Seattle. And when I was there, Seattle is like one of the most sex positive hubs of the world. And they had a center there called the Center for Sex Positive Education. And it's now closed, but it was the longest running sex positive education center. I think it's like over 40 years had been open. And they had a class there for polyamory, like a discussion group. I was like, okay, I'll go to that. That sounds cool. And I walk in and I was totally terrified. And I had all these judgments of who these people would be, who are such sinners and engaged in this, like this terrible lifestyle that I'm drawn to. Right? And that's when I met Adam, who I mentioned earlier. That was his first meeting too. And he's just this beautiful soul. So loving and so kind and also successful, and also, like all the things. I like very conscious. He's like very clear on what he wanted to eat and how he took care of himself, and all the things that I thought these people would not be, here he was. And I started to really challenge, and I was like, what are you drawn to? What are you drawn to? What do you want? Oh, we all want different flavors of ice cream. We all want ice cream, but we all want different flavors. This is cool. We can all have it. How does this work? And then shortly after that, we ended up attending a workshop around how people create these relationship agreements. And there was nothing that I could find online about this or anywhere else. It was just this one workshop. I found one person's example, which is pretty much a legal document. Like, that's not for me. But we took it and we made it ours by putting our name on it and changing a few critical things. And then over the years, we spent 5 years developing this and letting it change every quarter to say, who are we now? How do we want us to relate if we don't have these rules? And that was a really beautiful experience. And through that, we got connected. We were very deeply connected with the polyamorous community. And then through that journey, I also got connected with the kink community. And I found that I really do thrive most when I'm with two people. And that's my number. I tried 5 at once. I tried all the things. I'm like, let's just have it all. What would it be like? That is more of a headache than anything. And getting to this point of like, I really want deep love. And I want to be in deep emotional, spiritual, physical connection with two people. And that feels really good to me. And then just communicating that with these people that I was going on dates with and looking like, what do you want? How does that play into your life right now? How do we set that up so that everybody's winning? And it was magical. I met my husband when I met him when I was what I call polysaturated. So I was seeing these 5 people at one time, and things were a little crazy and wonderful. And also I didn't have time. And he was in a monogamous relationship with someone and he wasn't available, but we met and it was just something deeply resonated in our souls. And we had a beautiful time together. We did this thing. He invited me to what's called a nurture dance. And basically we just took turns holding each other and rocking each other like a baby. And I was like, this is so weird to do when I first meet somebody. And this is so beautiful. Wow, I feel so safe with this man. Fast forward a few months later, I have this weird calling to like have his baby. And I was like, this is so weird. So I ended up being on a phone call with him being like, so this is going to sound really weird. I know you're not available. I'm not trying to make you available, but I think I'm supposed to have your baby. And so if you ever need like a surrogate for some reason or something, like, let me know. Okay, that was weird. Okay, goodbye. A few months later, we meet up. We're both on speaking tour. He's also an amazing author of 8 different books. And he decided to fly in. We've been staying in communication. He decides to fly in. We're both going to be speaking in San Francisco at the same time. He flies in from speaking in Cape Town, South Africa, early to attend my workshops. I've got like 5 that week. He attends all of them. He's speaking at a big university. I go and I support him there. And we're just having this amazing connection over and over again. And it's like, there's something here that's really powerful. And at the end of the week, after he'd already moved his flight and we'd just been like pretty much together, inseparable, and we both were available that time for each other. It's like, wow, we want this. And I finished my last lecture and he had to go. And so I'm surrounded by people. And I was like, hold on one second. I turned to him and I was like, hey, do you want to be partners? And he's like, yes. And we gave each other a kiss and then he left. And then a half an hour later, he's driving across the Bay Bridge and he's like, so what does it mean to be partners? I was like, I don't know, but we get to make it whatever we want. And that was where it all began. Like, how do we want to make this what we want? We've been together for many years now. We have 2 children. They're phenomenal little souls. One is 5 and one is 4 at the time of this recording. And people are like, what are you? And like, we are whatever is serving us most in that time. And serving us most meaning we both are really deeply in touch with ourselves. We honor and prioritize ourselves first. And that sounds so anti what we're taught. It's like, I feel like we're taught to like, find your beloved, find your other half, and then take care of them. It's like, that model doesn't actually work very well. I've been a relationship coach for a long time, doesn't work. Instead, it's like, prioritize your relationship with yourself, really know you, accept you, love you, give yourself all the things you need so that you're a whole. And when you find another whole soul, it's just two wholes coming together and creating something even more magical. And these two whole souls, we've been on very different journeys. I mean, like where I am today versus when I met, two different people. And I've gone through pregnancy and birth and breastfeeding and like trying to find myself again and all of that twice. And our second son decided to come so fast that he couldn't, there was nobody that could help us. So my husband delivered our baby alone with me in the bathroom. And it's like, we never know the adventure, but we know that we're constantly tuning into what we each need and communicating that. So sometimes we've been monogamous and we just want to be together only. Sometimes we've been what I call momogamish, where I just want to be a mom and I didn't have energy or interest in anybody else. Like, that's it. Sometimes, he's been, wanting to just see multiple lovers just to like snuggle all across the world. Sometimes I've been in my slut and I'm like, I just want to fuck. That's what I want to do, right? I want to just claim that wild animal. I just want to fuck. And how do we support each other in those different spaces and allow for us to like, okay, so I hear this is what you want. Here's what I need to feel safe. Can I make some requests? What are our boundaries? What are our hopes? What are we scared of? Like, what does each of these things mean at every step? And how do we help each other live to the fullest while also honoring the fact that we have a commitment to being together as a foundation if it's the highest alignment for us. And there's no commitment of life. Like, I don't know if I'll be together with him in 5 years or on my deathbed. Actually, none of you do. If you're married, you still don't know. Doesn't mean, I can tell you, with a divorce rate over 50% now, it doesn't mean anything. Can you be real and authentic with the fact that the only person you have for sure is you? And if you can get real with that, it gives you the freedom to create exactly what you want because you're not so afraid to ask for it. There's nothing to lose. If you got yourself, there's nothing else to lose. There's only something to create together, and there's magic there. And you learn tools for processing and self-soothing and for self-pleasure and love, and then when you attract that whole person in, you get to make it whatever you want. And currently, our agreement is to continue loving and honoring each other and making sure that our foundation is solid first. And so we do have other partners. I have another partner I've been with for 2 years. He has another partner he's been with for almost 2.5 years. And at the same time, we've been really clear that like our marriage is our foundation and we invest in each other. We invest in this thing first and we make sure our kids are solid. We make sure our communication is solid. We make sure our connection is solid. And if it's not, we let them know what's going on and we get support. We make sure we always have, we are coaches who are constantly working with coaches because we want to get better and better at what we do and how we support people. And so it's like, okay, how do we do that? We grow ourselves, become aware of our own shit because we've all got shit. Okay, so we continue to sort through this and we let our partners know. And then we have our friend support group who is going to hold us accountable in love and isn't going to take sides and be like, oh yeah, your husband's such a blah, 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 right? I don't need that. What I need is somebody who can help me see my own shit and hold me accountable and help me remember how much I love this man when it's hard for me to feel it, right? And through that bolstering of each other, through our partners and being like, yeah, go work on this. Like we give you space to get that straight. It's already part of our agreements with you. That has really, really transformed the freedom we have to be ourselves and grow and live and love. And there's all different flavors. That's my own personal journey. I've been all over the place. And that's what works for us in this current situation in time. And tomorrow that could shift. I think every 3 months, he and I go through some sort of huge mind-blowing shift where like the whole world turns upside down and we grow in some way. And this past week was another one of those. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know who will be tomorrow. So
I think that's really the key is that what I often see is we just make so many assumptions in relationships that this is just how it's going to be. And the best thing that you just shared, I mean, everything was fascinating and I loved it because I haven't heard the full story either. So I was like, wow, amazing, great. Is I don't know who I'm going to be tomorrow. And I don't know if my desires and wants are going to change. So it's being true to myself and having the foundation of communication so that I can share it with my partner and he can or they can share it with me so that we can then figure things out together, what's going to work for both of us separately and together.
Yes, 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 exactly. And maintaining like that communication, and also the part that goes with it is the curiosity. We think that over time we know our partners and then we put them in a box. And I would just say, if I asked you, are you the same person now as you were 5 years ago, 6 months ago? You'd be like, no. But somehow we put our partners in that box. Like, of course they're this way. I've seen them do this thing. We don't. Like, even couples I've seen married for decades, they think they know like the underneath iceberg. That's just the tip that they actually know even after decades, because we don't understand the programming we've had and the lens we see the world through. So we're still projecting our stories and crap onto our partners, even though we think we know them. So it's like, let all that go. Just be like, who are you today? What do you want to, what are you afraid to tell me? And how can I celebrate you and tell you what I'm grateful for?
Oh, those are great. Those are great little questions. Who are you
Those
today?
are from the Gottmans. Yeah.
So fantastic. Like, I mean, I could go on so many different tangents here, but first of all, how do you start exploring, if you're interested, something that's not just monogamy? Like, where do you start? Is it self-connection, or is it like finding a group, or like what do you suggest?
Yeah. So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that you start journaling about this. Start being like, if I could have anything, what would I want? And give yourself permission to be as wild and crazy as you want. It's just for you. Nobody else has to see this. And then start finding out, okay, what would that look like? What would need to shift? And then starting to educate yourself around, like, there's tons of great resources. Let the cognitive stuff come in first. I mean, go to your heart first, figure out what you want, and then learn about it. I have a lot of couples that I work with who come to me because they've been together for a long time. They decided now they want to have a threesome. How do we have a threesome? Right? It's like somehow this idea is really cool to a lot of people. I want to have a threesome. Okay, so before we have a threesome, how do we prepare for that? Let's think about it. Let's learn about what would be there. Let's talk through the hypotheticals, what might actually happen. Lots of people in the world have had threesomes and written about it. You can learn from their mistakes before they happen to you and destroy your marriage, right? And it's like, how do you actually hear other people's stories and get their wisdom downloads as much as possible and talk through what the hypotheticals are? Even if you're single right now and you want to like have a threesome, you can still learn about this and talk through with a friend. Go to a girlfriend and be like, what would this be like? Who would I attract? How would I do this? Do I want to be attached to them ahead of time? Do I want to be in love with them? Like, what needs to happen? Or do I want this to be like some random thing that happens at a conference and then I never see them again, right? There's so many things that come into play, and we don't even know. Like, in porn and in movies, we just see something sexy happened and that's it. And then it's like everything continues on. But in real life, we're humans with hearts, and whoever you engage is a human with a heart. And so you need to decide, how are you going to handle that? And you're going to have your own triggers. And do you have the tools to process the new and challenging feelings that will come up in choosing a path less traveled? So if you don't have tools for really doing emotional release, I would highly recommend that. If you don't have a support system of people you can be honest with, who can hold you accountable, I'd highly recommend that. If you don't have a guide, a coach who can like give you some of these tools, I would highly recommend that. Like, bolster yourself as if you're preparing for a big journey, because you are. Do your homework, know where you want to travel to, know the best routes to get there, be prepared. And when you're prepared, when you've got everything packed and you know your itinerary and everything, then you set out. Then you set out and you start trying these things. If you just jump off a cliff or just try to hop on some plane, you don't know where it's going, you could be woefully unprepared and it could destroy you. And like, that's not it. So instead, get prepared. Start here in your heart, do your research, learn what other people have done, what they would recommend, make sure your support system is broad, and then we start working on the action. Then we go to the FetLife page and find out when's the meetup group, the discussion group, where there's no pressure to take off your clothes or to kiss somebody or whatever the thing is. Where's the the swingers party that has an orientation first, where you're going to go and be oriented, and people are going to hold your hand and talk about how to keep your boundaries and how to say no. And there's a safe culture built around that. So you can just go and observe and like meet people and realize that they're all humans and they have their own stories. And you can just, I thought I was going to a swingers party. And so I've been in contact with the organizers. You have to like talk with them and kind of get vetted first. I was really nervous and I was going to go, and then I decided, no, there's no way I can go. That's like not for me. And finally, like the night of, like an hour before, I'm like, okay, I'm going. And I messaged the event space. And I'm like, okay, I'm coming. And they're like, all right, great. So I'm like, what do I think a swingers party is? Well, in my mind, I'm walking into like the W Hotel, and I'm going to be wearing like clubby clothes. And there's going to be all these hot men and women around waiting for me to like just walk in, and then we're going to find each other, and it's going to be wild sex everywhere. So I get ready for that. Got some great heels, got some tight jeans, and like makeup, everything's done. Hop in my car, put on the GPS and start driving. I'm in Seattle. 40 minutes later, I'm outside of Seattle in the woods, and I end up at this like campground. And I'm like, what? This is not the W Hotel. And I park my car, and I'm like walking through the mud in these heels, and I'm now like feeling quite ridiculous. And I open the door, and there's a bunch of people walking around like their sheets just tied around them, and everybody's like just hanging out. The lights are on. This is not the W Hotel. This is like a campground. Everybody's just chilling. And I can hear some people like moaning. I'm like, oh my God, what have I walked into? And the lady just looks up at me from like the check-in desk, and she's like, you're new, orientation's over there. And I'm like, oh my God. So I walk to the next cabin and there's a teacher, and there's maybe 20 people who have never been before. And they lead us through this orientation. It was really beautiful. What I also discovered is not only was this my first swingers event, is I didn't end up at the swingers event. I went on the wrong night. I ended up at my first kink and BDSM event, which I had no real exposure to before this point. And so he's like, the orientation is talking about like consent and boundaries, and here's like how here's safe words, and when people are screaming, this is what could mean. And I'm like, oh my God, my brain is frying. And I'm like, and so I get up, and the orientation ends, and I make a beeline for the kitchen, and I just sit there like, I'll just stand here eating awkwardly because I don't know. I'm just so out of my element, and I don't know how to talk to anybody. And this sweet woman just came to me, and she's like, hey, do you need anything? Do you need any help? And I was like, I'm really scared. And she's like, yeah, it's okay. I've been there. She's like, do you just want to sit and talk? And we can just walk around, and I can answer your questions. And she basically just like held my hand and was my guide and told me about these different ways of relating, and why people engage, and what it means for different people, and like where the heart is in all of these different ways of connecting, whether it's kink or open relating or whatever it is. She just like this beautiful angel guide that appeared. And like that is what I wish for everyone. You don't have to do this alone. Anything that you're drawn to, there's somebody who's already been there. Find these people, connect with this real heart and the story behind it, and use their wisdom to know that you can have exactly what you want and be in integrity with yourself and your soul, and you can be filled with pleasure and joy. And yeah, it's going to be hard. These are whole new skills, but you can do this if you want to, and if you stay in an integrity and find other people who are in alignment with what you are desiring too, and you can honor their desires. So that's that.
Thank you so much, Ari, for all your beautiful sharings and eye openings. And my last thing is like, share a little bit more about you. How can people get in contact with you? Or is it like you have a course, or are you just doing coaching, your book, all of it?
Cool. So you can find my book. It's called Relationship Agreements. That's on Amazon. And I do a lot of private coaching. That's pretty much my focus right now. So if you're interested in private coaching, feel free to reach out to me. I'll list my email. My website is arikardosh.com. My email is ari@arikardosh.com. You can also find me on Facebook and just send me a message. I've got a private Facebook group called Love and Relationships that people can join. I have to admit, I'm not on there as much as many people who love Facebook groups are. So when I post, it really is hopefully for a good purpose. And so if you want to have like access to other podcasts or things that I think will be helpful for your journey, hop in there. You will not be overwhelmed. How's that? And I do have 2 different big tracks. I have one for people who are already in relationship, whatever your structure is. And that's really to look at how do we develop deeper connection, deeper communication? How do we stop walking on eggshells and really get to the heart of what we want and create or recreate, rekindle that beautiful feeling we had when we were first in love that often fades over time. And stop fighting, because fighting just stinks. And so that's one track. The other track is called Ready for Love, and it's working with people who are single and they want to be really ready for being in a relationship again. So how do we look at our patterns and shift out of those patterns that don't serve us anymore into a practice that does? And with both of these, I love dates. I just freaking love dates. I think dates can be absolutely magical. And I think that we don't understand the power of dates as a society. We're too focused on like, oh, it's just dinner and a movie and then fucking. Like, what if it could be way more than that? So I've created dates for both these programs where I get to be your like dating dominatrix. And I'll tell you as a single how to go on a self date. And what to do, where to go, things to try. You can do them all from home during COVID in 30 minutes or more. But a minimum of 30 minutes with yourself, and they can be really powerful and transformational. And for those who are in relationship, I will tell you who's the lead in this dance and who's the follow. And I give all the instructions to the lead, the video instructions, written instructions, and they're my favorite tools that I've collected over decades of doing trainings and relationship coaching and working with couples. I tell you what to try together instead of going to your go-to date or having to be blah or feeling the pressure of having to do something. It's already done for you. And so they're really fun and hugely transformational. So those are my 2 loves. I sometimes run a group program, thinking about maybe running one or both of them within the next couple months. If you're interested in either one, happy to chat with you, happy to connect. I do everything over Zoom because that's the times we live in, unless you're in Bali, in which case we can talk about meeting in person. So that's me. Would love to connect with each of you. And if you just have a question or you just want to chat, just message me. I love to just hear what's landing with people or where they're still feeling stuck.
Yeah, totally. And just last parting gift to everybody. What would you want people to walk away after listening and watching this to be like, oh?
Yeah, I would say, my husband's slogan is actually really amusing, but it's the perfect ending for this. My husband's like tagline for his life and all the coaching he does is everything is possible. And everything is possible. You can have it all. There doesn't have to be an or. You can have all the ands. You can have whatever it is that your heart desires, and you can do so with full integrity and a full fuck yes in you. And from everybody around you. And that's huge. So breathing into the possibility that you can have it all, I want you to have that. And one other thing I didn't share, I have a free video series, a 7-part series I just released in December for people to get through the holidays, but it's all about navigating conflict. And if you want that, just message me and I just need your email and then I'll start that series for you. But it's going to talk a lot about how do we get what we want in a place of conflict and that inner turmoil. So hopefully this is helpful.
Thank you so much. I've loved interviewing you and just listening to you. And I'm sure everyone else has too. Ari, I'll have all the links so everyone can follow you and find you and ask you the questions. Yeah, so much gratitude for you to show up and share today. Out of everywhere that you could have been, you were here chatting to me. So thank you.
So amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Mwah.